Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here coming at you with another video. Finally going to try and keep up with these again week to week. We'll try and get them out on Saturday or Sunday. Late recording Sunday night Australian Eastern Daylight Time after 10 weeks of the NBA season. Now, it's been an interesting week. It's been an interesting period as we head into the new year. There has been some genuine highlights and some genuine stars poking out in this one. Some serious defeats once again, and some more questions being asked than answers provided in a lot of circumstances. A few what-ifs floating around the league as expected, but nonetheless certainly worth covering. On top of that, also going to throw in my MVP race at the end of this one. Going to do a bumper video, so a week 10 wrap, and my MVP to the end of December for the 23-24 NBA season. So let's get into it. Let's start in the Eastern Conference. We'll start with Atlanta, 2-1 on the week, 14-20 on the season. This is through to the 5th of January. Got wins against Washington and Oklahoma City, lost out to Indiana. Best player through the week for me, Dejounte Murray, 28 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.7 turnovers to go with that as well. 58.6 from the field, 50% from deep, and over 80% from the free throw line. But the question right now for Atlanta is that they are 6 games below 500, with a team that's very much capable of being a 500 team, a team that's very much capable, if they were to put their minds to it and really get to work, of being a top 6 team in the East, and it's just not something that they've been able to do right now. A lot of questions still yet to be answered for that team there. We'll see how they continue to push through. Of course, there is always that constant conversation and constant questioning as to what exactly is going to happen with this team, particularly on the front of getting Dejounte Murray out of there. How long will Trae Young last as the number one man? Will another coach fall victim? A lot of questions to be asked of Atlanta there, but 6 games below 500. They've got a fair bit of work to do, but that 2-1 week, a nice step in the right direction for them, so to speak. Boston, 2-1 on the week, 27-7 on the season, and they continue to firm as one of the 2 favourites in the East, and probably one of the 5 favourites for the championship this season. Defeated San Antonio and Utah, lost out to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and that was a really good litmus test for them. Jason Tatum with a really good week, 28.3 points, 9.3 rebounds, 5 assists, 0.7 steals, and 1 block a game. Less than 3 turnovers, really effective scoring splits as well. 52% from the field, 52.2% from deep, and 87.5% from the free throw line. Boston just continuing to roll. It's as simple as that. Now, that matchup with OKC, that's a really interesting matchup. I don't necessarily know whether it totally outlaws them from being a genuine title contender. I think they're going to have the experience. I even think they're going to have the size, and I think they're a more rounded team. And right now probably does put them in the box seat as title favourites. It does hurt to say that. But I think between them and Milwaukee, I think the winner is still coming out of the East at this particular stage. Of course, Denver, Minnesota, and OKC, probably your other 3 teams that are going to cause any other stir from the West. But as far as the East is concerned, they're getting it done on both ends of the floor. They've got 4 guys playing to an all-star level, 5 guys, if they really turn it on, playing to an all-star level. And as far as a total depth of team, 1 through 5, probably haven't seen this from a team in the East since probably the Pistons. Probably dating back to that 05, 04, 06 level era of Pistons. So Boston with a lot on their plate right now, but they are clearly the best team in the East and should be the front-running favourites right now out of the East. For Brooklyn, 1-3 on the week, 16-20 on the season. Defeated Oklahoma City, but also lost to Oklahoma City as well as New Orleans and Houston. Best player through this period there for them, which is probably indicative of just how they're playing, Nick Claxton. It's not a shot at Nick Claxton, it's just a point. 14.5 points, 11.3 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.3 blocks, and 0.8 steals, 1 turnover a game. Efficient scoring splits, not shooting many threes. Yeah, it's just not much firing for Brooklyn right now. Of course, they get that win and split the mini-series with the Thunder, but they lose out to New Orleans and Houston, who are clearly playoff-level teams in the West. And I thought Brooklyn was going to be that real barometer team sitting around 500 or thereabouts and, really making a point for not only teams in the East, but certainly across the league, and they just haven't been able to deliver that there. Cam Thomas had a really hot stretch to start the season, absolute dog water at best over the last fortnight, cannot hit a shot, and Brooklyn right now just looking like that team that does need that genuine number one star. I think a genuine number one star does take them over the hedge. I think they become a genuine contender in the East, because they have so much going on as far as role players and people that can play position. But if you're going to deliver a 1-3 week and you're going to sit 4 below 500 and you're going to be inconsistent and your best player of the week's Claxton, then you're going to be in a bit of strife. That's currently where Brooklyn sit. It's where they continue to sit. I just really don't know what else there is to say beyond that. A team that does really have a lot more work to do, and you think Brooklyn needs work to do. Look at Charlotte right now, 1-2 on the week, but they are 8-25 on the season. Defeated Sacramento, lost to Denver and Chicago. Miles Bridges, I don't like really propping the guy up, had an okay week, 27 points, 6.3 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 0.7 steals and blocks, 2.3 turnovers, effective scoring splits. Charlotte are in a world of hurt with big contracts for players that aren't on the floor and they're underperforming. Simple stuff. Charlotte aren't a very good team. Sacramento losing to them would be very, very annoyed, considering the move that the Kings have made the last couple of weeks to try and get back up in the seedings. They would not be too impressed with the way that goes there. But of course, you're going to be in any game. They're going to be in any game that they play, just because they do have that raw level of talent that can spark at any point. It's just a matter of whether they do that, get that conversion. I mean, honestly, at this point, they're not even winning. They're winning once a week at best. So make of that as you wish. As I said, injuries, players with contracts that just can't fulfill, they're struggling at the moment. A team that is struggling but certainly seems to have a bit more upside there, and they are continuing to float around that top 10, is the Bulls. 2-2 on the week, 16-21 for the season. Split the series with Philadelphia across the week. Did defeat Charlotte, did lose out to New York. Chicago are in a really, really interesting position here. Vucevic wasn't playing, so Drummond started getting big minutes. Levine out, so Kobe White's been able to step up. He's had a really good season. In fact, he's going to be right up there for most improved player in the league. He's having that good of a season for me. DeMar DeRozan was their best player on the week. Again, you're splitting hairs between him and Kobe White at this point, or particularly this week. 21.3 points, 3.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1 steal, 0.3 blocks a game, less than 2 turnovers, effective scoring splits once again. DeMar DeRozan's going to continue to be DeMar DeRozan, but he's a guy right now that needs to be a third option on a contender. He can't be your number one option if you're wanting to contend. He's just too old. He's 35, 36 years old. Limited lifespan if you're going to try and contend with DeMar DeRozan at this age, and the way his production's been. The last couple of seasons, yeah, he showed moments, but there's a reason that teams have only peaked out with him. There's a reason they've never gone beyond and gone on to the promised land. Really simple stuff there. As I said, Kobe White's had a really, really breakout season for the Bulls there, and I think he's going to be right in contention for most improved player, but not much that he can do right now. Levine's back in, we'll see how that goes. DeRozan still scoring, Kobe White still about there. Vucevic hopefully not too far away. Who knows for the Bulls? They're tracking okay the last couple of weeks, but again, you just have to wonder whether some people are getting their stocks up, their stocks down, trying to avoid a trade or potentially get a trade just to start the clearing out process here. So we'll see what the Bulls continue to do. Cleveland 2-1 on the week. They are 5 games above 500, 20-15. 2 wins against Washington, as they should have. Lost out to Toronto, who are rejigged, might I add. Caris LeVert with a really nice week. 21 points, 4.3 rebounds, 6.7 assists, 50, 40, 100 splits, 1 steal, 0.3 blocks, less than a turnover a game. Really good contributions there for Caris LeVert, and that's one thing that Cleveland have somehow been able to do. They've been able to find guys just to step up. Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, both out at least until the All-Star break. Really wondering who's going to step up, who's going to rally for the team. Donovan Mitchell is really fluctuating on form right now, but if you're going to look across the board at it, it's Jarrett Allen and Caris LeVert who have really stepped up to play their role. That's why Cleveland's been successful. It's why they still remain above 500, 5 games above 500, might I add, and just continuing to really push through in the East. Continuing to be a thorn in the side of a lot of teams. They're probably being that barometer team more so than Brooklyn are. Cleveland do vary. They go from being that 4 to 6 range in the East can drop down to be a playing team. That's sort of the fluctuation they have right now. So again, I would like to see what this team looks like if Darius Garland is able to get continuous minutes and get back into the team. If Evan Mobley, when he gets healthy again, continuous minutes, gets back into the team. How the chemistry looks, how they continue to play, because I think they're the fourth best team in the East when they really do it. Well, the problem is that you can't build chemistry when no one's on the floor and they're not in their lineups and they don't know their movements and their actions and their sets. So, interesting time for Cleveland. 20-15, 5 games above 500, and they've still got pieces to come back in over the next month. We'll see how they handle January and certainly look heading into the All-Star break. Detroit got their first win in nearly 2 months. 1-3 on this particular period. 3-32 for the season. Got that win against Toronto. Barely got that done. Of course, lost out to Houston, Utah, and Golden State. Cade Cunningham continuing to stuff the stat sheet. Finally worked on that inefficiencies that he had at the start of the season, something that's a bit more respectable from him right now. 24.3 points, 3.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists, 0.5 steals and 0.3 blocks, less than 3 turnovers. Scoring splits are going up as well. So for Cunningham, he's really trying to raise his ceiling. He's really trying to get some production. But when you look at what has happened for Detroit in the draft over the last couple of years, as far as first round picks alone, when you look at who they've been able to bring in, I mean, a few more veterans would be great. I think they're a far better team with a lot more veterans on it, just to be able to build a bit of chemistry, just to be able to stabilise the lineup. But until they do that, they're just going to continue to flounder. I don't see a reprieve in sight. I don't think they're going to win 10 games this year. So they're not going to win 10 games. They're in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. I don't know how they're going to remedy it. As I said, they need veterans to try and win games. They've got a lot of good young talent, but I don't see them winning 10 games. I still think they're the worst team that's ever played in the NBA. Ever. And we're dating back to the Providence Steamrollers kind of era. Detroit are bad. They are a bad basketball team. Veterans change it up. It's like San Antonio, but they're a bad basketball team. I'm glad Cunningham's efficiency's improved because he's going to be out of there pretty soon. Pretty soon. For Indiana, 4-0 on the week. The only 4-0 team on the week in the Eastern Conference. 20-14. And they defeated New York, defeated the Bucks twice, and defeated Atlanta. And Tyrese Halliburton has been on an absolutely monstrously efficient tear. 22.3 points, 6 rebounds, 16 assists a game. 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks, less than 2 turnovers, on over 50% from the floor. Halliburton's having a pure point guard season that ranks right there with Magic Johnson and John Stockton. There's a reason he was my player of the week. Just dominant. There's no other way to describe it. It's just dominant. He has the ball in his hands, and whether it's someone else that's going to affect you on the scoreboard, or it's him that's going to affect you on the scoreboard, they will cause some hurt. There's a reason they're running at arguably the best offensive rating ever. And you look at the production, and you look at the three-point shooting. And this has been a subpar week for him shooting the three-pointer. He's had plenty of high 30, low 40% shooting weeks from deep. Can absolutely play. One of the 3 best guards in the league this season. I would probably just have him outside of the All-NBA team. The first team at least. But I'd certainly have him in the second. Which is going to say a lot for a guy who's leading the league in assists. Just freaky stuff there from Tyrese Halliburton. Again, Indiana 4-0 throughout that period. 6 games above 500. They are causing some headaches. And you have to really be able to score to be able to outscore Indiana right now. And that's the pressure that they cause for the opposition. For Miami, 1-3 on the week, 20-15 on the season. So they're 5 games above 500, heading towards that halfway mark. Defeated the Lakers. Yami Vasquez Jr. really dominating in that game there, but they did lose to Utah the Clippers and the Suns. A nice week for Bam Adebayo, 23 points, 12 rebounds, 3.3 assists, or 1.5 steals and a block a game. Passable numbers defensively there. I would like a little more efficiency from the offensive end. But Miami just, I don't know, they've gone through this really weird sort of run where they had 3 weeks of good basketball, 3 weeks of shocking basketball, another 3 weeks of good basketball, and now it looks like they're going to go through another period where they're going to try and chase 500 again. I don't know, the Heat they're really fluctuating between a really good team to a really okay team to a, geez, they look like a bad team. It's a strange dichotomy that the Heat have right now, and they really haven't changed much up. They've recruited really well as far as, being able to sign rookies and develop players and get minutes into key rotations. Obviously, you lose someone like Strus, you lose someone like Vincent. Does change the outlook of your game a little bit. I think they would love to have Max Strus on this team right now. Gabe Vincent, let him walk to the Lakers and he hasn't done much. I mean, it probably speaks more of the system. But Miami just can't continue to ride this roller coaster wave. They had a really nice run from an 8th seed to the NBA Finals last year. Full kudos on that. But I don't know. I don't like this as much as many people would. 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off doesn't really do it for me. I'd like to see them build a bit more consistency. We'll see how they go over this week and certainly through January. But if they're just going to ride that, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, like a shift worker, they're going to have to keep changing over their roster just to try and get something to work. And by the time it works, it's too late. You're back on the opposite shift. So we'll see exactly what Miami can do. But yeah, I don't know. They're just really riding that roller coaster of form. For Milwaukee, 1-2 in the week, second best team in the East, 25-10, defeated the Spurs in a big matchup, lost twice to the Pacers. Giannis just continuing to put up numbers, continuing to remind people that, Jokic might be the best player on the planet, but I'm certainly number 2. I don't think there's any disagreement with it this season. This is a guy that's playing all-world defense and all-NBA first team overall anyway. 33.3 points, 14.3 rebounds, 8.7 assists, 2 steals and 1.3 blocks on the week, less than 3 turnovers, over 60% from the field, over 37% from deep, and over 70% from the line. Giannis is going to roll that out. The Milwaukee win a championship. I've got no problems with saying he's taking back his crown as the best player on the planet. No issues whatsoever. Scores, rebounds, plays defense, facilitates. What else do you need? Add to the fact that he's 7 foot. Just dominant. But the real question there for Milwaukee is that Indiana team is just a real thorn in the side, and they're not going to be able to do too much if they continue to have that thorn in their side. It's going to be extremely hard for Milwaukee to consider themselves getting out of that first round when Indiana are going to be a team they likely face. And I don't know, it's in all sports, there always seems to be a bogey side for a team. Is Indiana the bogey side for Milwaukee? I don't know. But the way it keeps working, it certainly doesn't seem like they have an answer. I don't necessarily know whether it's just how Halliburton is on the offensive end. I don't know whether it's because the defense of their bigs is nullified with the way their offense is structured. I don't know. I can't really see an answer for Giannis. And I can't see enough defensive strength to guard Lillard and Middleton when he's on. And Lopez can stretch the floor, which is just going to open up the lane and get Miles Turner out of there. So I don't know. That'd be a really interesting series to tune into in the postseason there for Milwaukee and Indiana. But they're going to need to do some work, because if you're Indiana, you're going to have a lot of confidence going in if you're taking on the Bucks, knowing that I think it's 4 out of the 5 contests that 4 out of the last 5 contests they've had in the regular season have been to Indiana. A bit of work to do there for the Bucks. Giannis playing really well, but they're going to need to work on it as a team. New York 3-1, they're 20-15, so they are just as good, if not better than Cleveland, Miami, Indiana, all in that little group there, that next little collection, along with Orlando, realistically, that are sitting there outside of your Bostons, your Philadelphias, and your Milwaukees. They all sit in that little group. 3-1 on the week, 20-15, defeated Minnesota, Chicago, and Philadelphia. Lost to Indiana, Jalen Brunson with a bumper week. 26 points, 2.8 rebounds, 8.8 assists, 2.5 turnovers, 0.5 steals, 0.5 blocks Would like to see a little more efficiency from the field, less than 44%, but getting it done from deep and getting it done from the free throw line, some really good measurements there. And Brunson's really stepped up. Of course, there was the Becky Hammond comment regarding him being an A1 player, which was taken completely out of context, but she, I can't disagree with what she said. There's, 3 guys in history that have been tiny or small guys that have led championships? Steph, Isaiah, and Kuzi. That's it. It's not a real shock. That's just how it is. But Brunson's a really good guy. He's the guy that's really gelled this New York team to make them consistent. Gets it done at both ends of the floor. Now, what he does on the defensive end isn't necessarily on ball and pressure. It's rotating. It's taking a charge. It's forcing a double. It's trying to throw and get an intercept. Little things like that really impact his effort defensively. And offensively, we know what he can do. The fact that people were still shocked when he left Denver and was still able to produce this was amazing, just to see how many people actually don't tune into the league. But Brunson performing really well. Julius Randle still performing really, really well. Of course, we've seen the impact of this trade with Anunoby heading over, which I think is only a good move. It's going to really strengthen them defensively on the perimeter and strengthen them as a team defensively, which is what they needed. But offensively, it's now going to allow for your possessions to funnel through your 2 main offensive assignments. So you're going to see more consistent numbers from Randle and Brunson. I think you're going to see better efficiency from Randle and Brunson. You then have a third pinch hitting option, which is your best 2-way player on the team. And that's a really nice outlook for New York. I don't think it puts it over the hump, and I still think they need one more. But it really does sort of, lay credence and everything of that nature to them as to why they can be a consistent team. And, it could be enough to get them as that number 4 seed. It could be enough just to get them over Orlando with a little bit of experience. I think it'll be enough to get them over Cleveland because they're going to be without a lot of players for a continued period. But for the Knicks, they've really got to capitalise on this trade. They've now got to capitalise on the fact their 2 best offensive options are getting more possessions. Really simple stuff. Orlando 1-3 on the week, so one of their worst weeks on the season, but they are still 20-15. Defeated Denver. Paolo Banchero with a huge game there, a career game for him against Nikola Jokic. They did lose out to Phoenix, Golden State, and Sacramento. Banchero, really nice week, as I mentioned. 32.5 points, 8.8 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.5 blocks. Turnovers not ideal. It is something I do harp on a little bit there, but it was clear he was the best player on the team this week. 46.1 from the field, 44.4 from deep, 78.3 from the free throw line. And Orlando, now that they're going to be reaching this All-Star break, are going to be able to, well, certainly the halfway point, but certainly heading towards the All-Star break, are going to be able to look at one another. They're going to have to look at each other as a team. They're going to have to really assess because they're going to be 0.6, 0.7 of the way through the season come the All-Star break, and they're going to need to devise a game plan if they are going to make a run into the top 4. As I said, it's an absolute logjam for that top 4 right now. Well, certainly for 4th place. Because Boston, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia, they're going to be 1 through 3. But when you look at every other team that is going to be involved in that race, it's Cleveland, it's Indiana, it's Miami, it's New York, it's Orlando. That's 5 of the 8. They've then got to make sure that they can avoid Chicago and avoid Brooklyn for that playing tournament. Because if they do that, that's going to be fine. Your top 8 is going to be really set. And I think they're going to be the 5 other teams that make it up outside of, obviously, Boston, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. But who's going to be that 4th seed? And that's where Orlando need to decide, because they're a really good defensive team. They don't have that leader. Banchero trying to take that step. I think that's what they're going to need. If they're really going to establish themselves as a playoff team, they're going to need to establish a genuine leader. And I think Banchero's going to, and I've been saying this a lot, but I think Banchero's that guy. Penciled him as an All-NBA guy out of his first game. Just got a feel about him. For Philadelphia, 1-2 on the week, 23-11 on the season. Got a win against Chicago, lost the return game, and lost to New York. Tyrese Maxey played in all 3. 22.7 points, 1.7 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 steal, less than a block a game, less than a turnover, 2 turnovers a game though, so I can take that. Would like to see better splits from him. Does get that Kobe-esque sort of comparison playing next to Joel Embiid. But would like to see better splits from him. 42.6 from the field, 31.8 from deep, 71.4 from the free throw line. For Philadelphia, can they make it a bit of a run to get the second spot? If they don't make a run to second spot, then what's going on with Joel Embiid? How bad's the ankle injury? Does have to start asking some questions there, I feel. Just an interesting look to see a guy in and out with an ankle injury. Nothing really substantial coming about it. Not a lot of social media hype about it. You know, there was talk about him being interested in a trade earlier in the year, or people being interested in trading for him. I just wonder whether the situation in Philadelphia is now good enough that it won't happen. $50 of mine to a particular friend, David. Hopefully says that if he goes anywhere, it is to Miami. David, being a Knicks fan, is obviously wanting that to head to New York. But again, that'd be really interesting to see what they do there, particularly if that's how they're looking to pair things up. And then you have to weigh up. Okay, if he goes to New York, are you taking Tyrese Maxey or are you taking Jalen Brunson? Because that'd be your second option. And then who's your third? Tobias Harris or OG Anunoby? It's a little bit to weigh up there, particularly from a Philadelphia standpoint. You go to Miami. Okay, so you move Bam to power forward. You're probably going to keep Jimmy. He's played with Jimmy before. Interesting to see how that one would work out. But right now for Philly, they're clearly the third best team in the East. I don't think there's a worry about them not being the third best team in the East. It's a worry for them, though, being able to compete and get to that second seed. I don't know whether they're going to be able to catch Boston at this point, but I think they can certainly capture the second seed. And if you're Philadelphia, that's something you're going to want to work with, because you're going to want as much of a home court advantage as you can get prior to the conference finals. Because if they are on the back foot in the second round, don't worry about it. Just cash in the opposition. As simple as that. Over to Toronto, who were the recipients of RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. 2-2 in that opening week with the gentlemen. 14-21, so they're around that playing tournament level. Defeated Cleveland and Memphis. Lost to Detroit. Detroit avoiding the all-time consecutive games record there. And Sacramento. But a guy that everyone is talking about that might be on the move is Pascal Siakam. 28.3 points, 5.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, efficient scoring split, 60.9 from the field, making 2/3 from deep, 2 turnovers a game. Again, I just feel that there's probably a level of, a bit of an equal footing trade with the way that went there, Toronto and New York. You look on the offensive end, obviously, you have Pascal Siakam as your number one, but you also now have the ability to let Scotty Barnes as the number two really play a genuine two-way game of, yep, I'm the second option scoring, but I am clearly the team's best defender. You then also compare him in with the fact that, okay, I've got to really focus on my defensive assignment here, so we're going to bring in RJ Barrett, and we're going to bring in Emmanuel Quickley, and they're going to start pinch hitting some points. So I think for Toronto, they can continue to turn that around. You just have to wonder whether Siakam's overstayed his welcome. You do have to wonder whether there's any more beyond the ceiling that is Pascal Siakam right now. Because he's, a two-time All-Star? Genuine second option on a championship team. But you've got to look at what that means now for him as a player. Does he peak out as two-time All-Star, second option on a championship team, big contract? Okay, get him to a team that can compete for a championship. He's a genuine second option. Worth a look at. Okay, understandable. But if you're just going to trade him as a number one option, and he's going to continue to produce like this, and you don't really have a team around him, I don't know, it just becomes a bit of a different task. I think this has probably been the best Toronto team that's been around him for a couple of years now. Does Toronto just try and ride it out for the rest of the season, and then see what they can do in the off-season? I don't know. It's a really interesting time there if you're a Raptor and a Raptors fan, just to see what they do. Siakam again, all-star level player, second option on a championship team, but he finally has a better team around him and started to build a bit more chemistry and a bit more sense in the lineup. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see exactly what Toronto does. Over to Washington, didn't win a game all week, 6-28 on the season, lost to Atlanta, lost twice to Cleveland. Kyle Kuzma continuing to be their best player, 21 points, 4 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 0.7 steals, more than 3 turnovers a game, less than 47% from the field. Jordan Poole has been measured to have the worst plus-minus in the league. Now, I'm not a big fan of plus-minus. It's a very skewed stat. I mean, you look at a guy that comes off the bench in a blowout, all of a sudden the margin goes from 20 to 10, he's plus 10. Like, great, the other side sat their second unit down. It can be, from a long-term standpoint, it makes sense. But to look at plus-minus game by game, pretty painful. But Jordan Poole is currently last in that stat across the league. I think that's a fair indictment for Poole and a fair indictment for Washington, considering the Detroit Pistons are still in the league, Charlotte is still in the league, and the Spurs have been awful. Not a highlight for Washington, but nonetheless that is the current situation over there. Don't know what they're going to do. They're stuck in the mud. They're going to try and blow that up. They're going to try and bring a guy. They're going to try and bring a reasonable name in. You know, or they've just got to go absolute young and just and build it. I don't know how they're going to do it, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done right now with that team there. As I mentioned before, my beast in the East, Tyrese Halliburton, around at 22, 6 and 16 on the week. Just getting it done for Indiana, just continuing to prove that he's having the best, pure point guard season that we've seen, certainly since Steve Nash, but, you know, we're reaching a John Stockton, Magic Johnson level. That's a big level. That's unprecedented level. Something for people to really consider. And the fact that I would probably still have him on the second team. I think there's just been two guys at least that you'll see towards the end of this video that have just had better seasons. It's as simple as that. The 10 best teams in the East, the Celtics, the Bucks and the Sixers are top three. As I mentioned, the Pacers, the Heat, the Magic, the Cavaliers and the Knicks, they're 4 through 8, but they're going to continue to fight for that, pretty much jostle all through and rotate through there for the rest of the season. They're fighting out for that first round of home court advantage, really. I think the Sixers and the Bucks may trade second and third. I think the Celtics stay on top. I think the Nets and the Bulls, they just keep trying to work something out, and it's just going to be a matter of time to see whether Toronto build into that or not. I don't know. But the Eastern Conference right now is really interesting. There's some interesting players, and it's going to be really fun to see how that 4 through 8 seeding there in the East continues to play out throughout the rest of this season. From the East, we move over to the West. We start with the Dallas Mavericks, who went 3-1 on the week, 21-15 on the season, defeated Portland twice, win against Golden State, as well went down to Utah in their only loss. Best player across all 4 games, Jaden Hardy, 14 points, 3.8 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 0.3 steals and 0.3 blocks, less than 2 turnovers, efficient scoring splits. Dallas just need to get chemistry time now into Luka and Kyrie, and then it's a matter of seeing where the pieces fall. The big key is going to be not overloading them, and again, we've seen a couple of teams there in the East that have really tried to refine their offensive process by really focusing key possessions through their number 1 and number 2 options. I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing, but if you're going to have guys that are just going to put up numbers and you're not going to be able to get results and production out of it, then it's something they're really going to have to look at, really something that they're going to have to consider. Dallas right now floating anywhere between that 3rd and 6th seed, probably more 4 to 6 when you look at how the conference is unfolding. So for them, they're going to really want to aim to be that 4th seed and at least get a first round matchup before they potentially get stuck with playing Minnesota or OKC on the road. But if they're going to be able to produce and they're going to be continuing winning games, then they're going to cause a lot of headaches over there in the West. And I don't exactly know who has the answer on the perimeter, at least defensively, for that combination of Kyrie and Luka if they are fit and firing. I don't know about anyone else, but I wouldn't necessarily want to be guarding them in a playoff series. We'll see how Dallas continue to work. It's a matter of getting chemistry into them. For Denver, 2-1 on the week, defeated Charlotte, massive win against Golden State, loss out to Orlando, and the best player for Denver through that period there, that 2-1 week, 25-12 on the season. Nikola Jokic continuing to have a top 5, top 3 season once again, 25.3 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, 0.7 blocks, just over 3 turnovers, and the epically efficient scoring, 76.2% from the field, 66.7 from deep, 83.3 from the free throw line. Now this team's only going to start to get better with Aaron Gordon back in it, and they're going to be able to continue to build some chemistry. Again, the only concern that I would have if I'm Denver is that if they're not going to have a really long home court advantage. At the moment, they're the third best team in the West? So that's going to see them through to at least one round of the playoffs. And again, they're a team that's clearly able to get it done. So they're not going to be too stressed about really firing up until after the All-Star break to really try and make a run. But I would not want to be playing Denver when they're in form, and I would not want to be playing Denver when Nikola Jokic is just on the kind of run he's on right now. Averaging 10 of 11 from the field over the last week and a bit. That's his worst week of the season. 25, 8 and 8 on 76%. There's a reason people think he's the best player in the world. Very hard to debate when they're continuing to produce like that. Aaron Gordon is back, as I mentioned, so I think the chemistry is what's going to be the real thing here for Denver. They're going to have some time to, sort of work a few things out, heading towards that All-Star break, wanting to keep things going, wanting to keep things moving, understanding where they sit as a team. Really interested just to see how that continues to play out for Denver, particularly through January and also as they head towards that All-Star game there. But I think Denver will be okay. They're a team that's going to be primed and ready to go by the playoffs. I think, as I said, it's going to be a matter of how much of a home court advantage they may or may not have at that point. Golden State, 2-2 in the week, 17 and 18. This is a team that's playing well below the records that they show there. I don't know whether they necessarily deserved a 2-2 week. I don't necessarily know whether they deserve to have a 17 and 18 record. Nonetheless, wins against Orlando and Detroit, lost out to Dallas and Denver. Steph Curry still trying to play out of his mind. 29, around 29, 4 and 6. 9.3 points, 3.5 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 1.8 steals, 0.8 blocks, less than 3 turnovers, 44.8 from the field, 39.6 from deep, 83.3 from the free throw line. Draymond Green has just been announced in the last 24 hours that he'll be off suspension very, very shortly, reinstated after 12 games. But the big thing right now is they're all fighting, they're all whinging, they're all moaning. You've got veteran players who can't accept that they're veterans. You've got young guys who can't accept roles. And you've got a top 15 player of all time who's still trying to ball out of his mind just to get the team a win. And nothing's being done about it. That loss to Denver with Jokic hitting that near 40-footer to win the game. There's talk that was essentially the nail in the coffin of the Warriors as a team. And it's very hard to argue. It amazes me that there's this level of talent in the team, particularly that of the Warriors, and nothing's being done. Not a damn thing is being done. It's mind-boggling. I wouldn't be surprised if Draymond tries to settle into a new role. I wouldn't be surprised if Clay tries to settle into a new role. They're going to have to if they're going to have any form of success. How or when they do it is another question. I just feel that's going to be the only way this team's going to have any success. I mean, they're nearly at 500 still. Chris Paul's now injured, but they're nearly at 500 despite all of this drama. So imagine if they were just able to put together, 2 months of basketball. If they can make a bit of a run after the All-Star game, then they could very well be a top 6 team. They're a playoff team. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen right now. They're going to have to really reassess. They're really going to have to work out where all the pieces on the chessboard are going to stand while they really try and make a move. Because the guy I just talked about there, Steph Curry, needs as much assistance as possible. Notice no one else is talking about that one, though. Over to Houston, 17 and 16 on the season, 2 and 1 on the week. Defeated Detroit and Brooklyn, lost out to Minnesota. Alfred Sengun continuing to have that breakout season. I do think he's an all-star this year, by the way. 25 points, 5.7 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 2 steals, 0.3 blocks, 59.6 from the field, 86.4 from the free throw line. And it's really crazy to see a team that has veterans, that has guys that are really wanting to break out, guys who are someone in the prime who have signed in with this team, and they've gone, you know what? Sengun's the future of this team. Sengun's the number one option. If we're going to win, we need to develop Sengun. So we're getting in the ball. And we're getting out of his way. If you're Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, and you've signed on to this team, you could very well go, nah, stuff this is my squad. Jalen Green, nah, I'm the young guy on this team. But everyone's looked at Sengun at how good he is. Everyone's looked at the veterans around the team. Ime Udoka's continuing to prove what kind of a coach that he is. I didn't think Houston were going to be above 500 beyond maybe a small stretch at the start of the season. And here they are being a team that's potentially a top 8 team in the West. really, really pleasant. And overall, I think for Houston, just a really prime example of why you've got a young guy who's, a really good talent. You need to give him touches. You need to get him the ball. There's another team in Texas, one of the only Texas team we haven't talked about, that really could be doing that with a all-time level talent. They're choosing not to. Big difference. Obviously, some veteran savvy also would assist that team. I would, as I said, I think they would be 15 wins better just by adding veterans. But for Houston, really nice little patch here at the moment. Defeating who they need to defeat. I think the loss to Minnesota is, pretty indicative of where they are as a team. But just getting touches into Şengün really making a difference. The Clippers 3-0 on the week. You never guess who returned to cause that 3-0 run. 22-12, 10 games above 500. This team is making a move. Defeated Miami, Phoenix, and New Orleans. Kawhi Leonard just continues to be Kawhi Leonard. 24.3 points, 7.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 2.3 steals, 1.3 blocks, less than or just at 2 turnovers. 50-50 splits from the field and from deep. Over 85% from the free throw line. Kawhi Leonard's a winner. He's back from injury and they're back to being one of, or if not the most informed team in the league. It's not a coincidence. Paul George had a really good week, by the way. It's not to discredit Paul George. Kawhi Leonard's clearly been the best player for the Clippers this year. He's clearly been their most valuable player. And I think Kawhi Leonard right now is in the conversation towards that. He's in that, top 10 MVP conversation. Now, spoiler alert, he did have a couple of rough weeks, which has probably cost him in my top 10 to the end of December. But I can tell you now, at the time of recording, he's in the 10. I think Kawhi's had that good of a season. I think he's been a top 10 player this year. And with him being a top 10 player this year, with everyone else fit and firing, the Clippers 10 games above 500, what a surprise. It's crazy to think that a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year and a 2-time Finals MVP is one of the biggest what-ifs in league history. But here we are. The guy that doesn't have a league MVP should have one. That's all I'll say. We'd be looking at Kawhi Leonard a hell of a lot differently, but I don't think many people, with this level of longevity despite the injuries and setbacks, when you look at how that run's been, you look at your Tracy McGrady's, you look at your Grant Hills, you look at your Bill Waltons, you look at your Derrick Roses, I don't think anyone has had more of a what if. Maybe other than Bill Walton. But, that's the list. Him and Bill Walton. Big what if. Clippers are firing. Kawhi's firing. They're okay. The other team that's not okay in LA, that was the Lakers. From a 3-0 run for the Clippers, an 0-4 run for the Lakers. They've gone from above 500 to 2 games below 500, 17-19 on the season. Lost to Minnesota, New Orleans, Miami, and Memphis. Memphis is the big one there because, they could potentially start to make a bit of a run. Davis with a really big week, 28.3 points, 12.5 rebounds, 5.3 assists, monster defensive numbers. I think he's the defensive player of the year, 3.5 blocks, 1.8 steals, 3.5 turnovers, but again, 59.2 from the field. The Lakers have hit disaster point. All of a sudden it's the coach. All of a sudden you've got lead players that won't face the media, who won't watch games out. All the talk has started. The GM has started. Now, what does that mean for the Lakers? What does it mean for everyone on the team? I don't know. But the trade talk of Anthony Davis has dipped right down when you look at all the production that he's brought to the team this year and how much better they've been when he's been in the squad. That's all I'll say. But the Lakers, no doubt there'll be a massive turnover. Again, there was all this hype at pre-season. How would they go with their recruits? Not that they signed anyone or got anyone decent. Now, all of a sudden, there's not much to play for in the regular season. They're starting to fold again. And it's just becoming really evident right now, isn't it? When you look at it, that, there's going to be some movement in LA. Whether it's the coach, whether it's the bench. Hopefully it's not Anthony Davis. It could be LeBron, who knows. But the Lakers, complete other end of the scale. The Clippers, all of a sudden, 10 games above 500. The Lakers, 2 games below 500. And, it's not looking good. It's not looking good at all. For Memphis, they went 2-2 on the week, defeated San Antonio and the Lakers, lost to the Kings and the Raptors. But they're all of a sudden only 9 games, 11 games below 500. But they're a team that's not playing like they're 11 games below 500. Ja Morant having a really good run, Jaren Jackson getting back into a bit of a run here, Marcus Smart back in, having a really nice run. My player of the week for them, Desmond Bain, continuing to have a breakout season. Another guy who'll be right up there in most improved voting. 21.8 points, 4.8 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 0.3 steals, 2 turnovers, 54% from the field, 44% from deep. I'm telling you, don't let Memphis get towards 500. It's a real chance they can do it. And they would be rallying from an almost unprecedented point to make a playoff appearance. But they could do it. They've got the talent. On both ends of the floor, they've got the talent. It's a matter of them controlling themselves. It's a matter of that culture being set. It's a matter of them heading in the right direction, but they could do it. Will they is another question, but I don't see with the rate of improvement they're having why it's not a possibility. The end of January is going to be a really interesting point for Memphis. I mean, they're going to have a dozen games left in the month. They're 11 games behind now. Say that's only 6 by the end of the month. Then you're only, say, 4 games by All-Star break, 3 games by All-Star break. It becomes very interesting from that 10th to 8th seed if you are, 7, 8, 9, 10 if you are Memphis. Because they can do it. Bain having a big season. Morant clearly back and firing. We'll see. I think Memphis is going to surprise a few more people. Speaking of a team that surprised a few, that'd be the Minnesota Timberwolves. 2-2 on the week, 25-9 on the season. One of the 5 best teams and certainly one of the 5 title contenders so far this year. Defeated the Lakers and the Rockets. Lost out to the Knicks and New Orleans. A relatively quiet week for Anthony Edwards, despite the fact he averaged around 31, 4 and 4. 31.3 points, 3.5 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 0.5 steals, 1.5 blocks, nearly 5 turnovers a game, but 48% from the field, over 40% from deep, and over 85%, closer to 90% from the free throw line for Anthony Edwards. Minnesota just continue to click. You've got all NBA presence with Edwards. You've got all defensive presence with Gobert. You've got 6-man presence with Reed. The ownership of the team has just changed with A-Rod and his consortium. You would have to think that Kevin Garnett at some point gets brought back in to try and, mend relationships there. So there's a lot going on for Minnesota right now, and it's all positive. Are they peaking a little early for a really young team? That, again, remains to be seen. But they're gelling. Karl Anthony Towns seems to have fit into a role. Finally, Rudy Gobert, again, back to his all-defensive level. Defensive Player of the Year candidacy level. But isn't being relied upon to come out and have 20 points. If he gets 20 points, great. If he doesn't, no big deal. He's going to lock down the opposite end of the floor. The Minnesota is just a really good mix right now. They're winning where they need to. New Orleans are making a bit of a run, as we mentioned there, as they lost to Minnesota, and they had a really good week themselves. 3-1, 21-15. They're 6 above 500. Defeated the Lakers and Brooklyn as well, lost out to the Clippers. But they're having a really team-orientated run, particularly over the last week. Zion Williamson, for me, their best player. 18.8 points, 4.3 rebounds, 4.5 assists, less than 3 turnovers, 60% from the field, 80% from the line. For New Orleans, it's just getting that correct balance about who's taking all the shots, who's being efficient with their shots. Because they showed last year when Brandon Ingram, when Zion Williamson, when CJ McCollum, when Jonas Valanciunas were clicking, very similar to an Indiana almost, where they're going to put points on the board, they're going to overwhelm you, and they're going to get the job done. But the problem is it wasn't sustained. It was very much like Indiana. It wasn't sustained. Injuries became an issue. Trade talks became an issue. Zion Williamson himself became a headline. That's a whole other school of fish. But they're showing what they could do. People that paid attention to the league saw this was happening. And now that they've got 12 months in, a bit of maturity, a bit of health about them, they're producing again. New Orleans made a playoff run, not last year, the year prior. Why can't they do it again? There's every chance they can do it again. Very similar to Indiana, as I pointed out. Just continuing to get things done. Zion producing, really liking his fit there. Only qualm I've ever consistently had is the fact that CJ McCollum should not be your number 1 option. He takes more shots than anyone else. He should be your 3rd option. Now, he does have points where it's like, wow, he's hit 4 or 5 threes in the opening quarter. But that happens once a month. Don't sacrifice 1 in every 12 games for what could be 11 out of 12 games in Zion and Ingram. I just think New Orleans are they're in a far better spot than people give them credit for, that's for sure. OKC 2-2 on the week, 23-11 on the season. Another team that thought they'd take a step, thought they'd be that 6th, 5th seed. I didn't think they'd be a top 1, top 2 seed. Defeated Brooklyn, defeated Boston, and that had the basketball world talking. Lost out to Atlanta, uncharacteristic. Lost out to Brooklyn, so went the split on the mini-series there. And Shea, with his worst defensive week of the season, still managed to produce 31.8 points, 8 rebounds and 6.8 assists a game. Only the 0.3 steals, no blocks attributed there. Less than 2 turnovers there and efficient scoring splits. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander has been the most valuable player in the NBA for me this season. I have no issues in saying Shea's been the most valuable player in the league this season. Over Embiid, over Jokic, over Giannis, over Doncic, over Halliburton. I think he's been the best perimeter player in the league. I think he's been the best shooting guard in the league. He's a guy that's producing at a level that we haven't seen since like Dwayne Wade in 2009 and some guy called Jordan before that. Heard he played okay. But people don't tune in to Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. People don't tune in to Oklahoma City. So what would they know? They're a really good young mix. The question is, are they too young to succeed at the moment? And it's something I think people are going to weigh up. When you look at how everything unfolds, there's no reason why they can't continue to have that success. No reason they can't continue to build on it. This is like OKC, 12 years ago? When they were doing the same thing? 10 years ago, OKC with Durant and Westbrook went to the conference finals against the eventual champion Spurs. Now, what Shea Gilgeous-Alexander will be as a player remains to be seen. To compare him to Durant at this point of his career would be unfair. To ever compare him to Westbrook at this point is unfair. But you're talking about a guy who, for me, has been the most valuable player in the league. With a team that's been one of the 5 best in the league. That could very well make an unlikely conference finals run this year. I think there's some merit in that. 23-11, defeated Boston, who's certainly one of the 2 favourites coming out of the East. You're talking about an NBA Finals level opponent. Let's see what OKC can do. For Phoenix, they were really ticking on all cylinders and have made a bit more of a bounce back over the last couple of weeks. 3-1 in the week just gone, 19-16, so they're now 3 games above 500 there. Wins against Orlando, Portland and Miami, lost out to the Clippers. And Bradley Beal playing in all 4 games, finally seeing some consistent court time, was my player of the week for the Suns, really reaping the rewards there in that offensive system. 23 points, 4.5 rebounds, 4 assists, beat Washington. Wish they had that level of efficiency from a player. 0.8 steals, 0.8 blocks, less than 3 turnovers, over 50% from the field, perfect from the line. Phoenix, just another example of when they've got everyone on the floor and they're starting to get things done, they're fine. And then the drama of Kevin Durant doesn't need to be worried about. Devin Booker just continues to do his thing, by the way. There's no one wants to talk about that, just how placid and consistent he is and why he's consistently ranked up there as one of the best shooting guards in the league. Anthony Edwards, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, probably Devin Booker, they're your 3. He's just continuing to push on. He's really translated his game into more of a point guard role this season, which has really helped considering the usage of Kevin Durant and the efficiency of his usage of Kevin Durant, particularly what Devin Booker can bring to the team when he doesn't need to be passing the ball and facilitating and really running the offense. He's an elite level scorer, particularly inside the arc. Bradley Beal, a bit of a mix of both. But yeah, for Phoenix, when they're able to get everything running and ticking on all systems, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see like someone like a Bradley Beal as your 3rd option, consistently being up there as one of your best players and an elite level best player. If you had a shooting guard that was going to have a 5-year period averaging 23, 5 and 4 on 50% from the field, you're in pretty good stead. That was your 2nd option, let alone 3rd option. I think Phoenix are going to be okay. I think Kevin Durant will be okay with it. You've just got to be consistently on the floor. You've just got to be consistently performing. Really simple stuff. And for Phoenix, if they're going to get chemistry, if you're going to get minutes into players, you're going to build chemistry. If you're going to build chemistry, you're going to be able to manage lineups. You can manage lineups, you'll win games. Winning solves everything. Moving on to Portland, that would solve a lot of things. They went totally defeated on the week, 0-3. They've only won 9 all season. They did lose out to the Suns, as I pointed out, did lose out to Dallas twice. And really, bit of an indictment. Jeremy Grant, their best player, and he's had a really nice little run at the moment in Portland, underrated sort of run right now as far as people trying to do a bit in the league. While we focus on all these stars that don't deliver, you've got guys like Jeremy Grant that have had a really good 3 or 4 weeks. A month and a bit worth of basketball in Portland as the Lone Ranger. Unfortunately, a bit of a downturn week, 14.3 points, 1 rebound, 2.7 assists, 2.3 turnovers, efficient from the field, but just the production's not there. And when the production's not there from a guy who's been playing a number 1 option, you're not going to win games, and that's really simple. That's why they went 0-3. Not much more needs to be said from that standpoint there. Portland just seemed to be a real jumble of pieces. It's the only way to put it, that someone took the some okay dregs from the barrel of a 2K game, put them together, and wondered why the chemistry didn't build. It's essentially how Portland look right now. Sacramento went 3-1 on the week, 21-13. They're continuing to build back. Defeated Memphis, Orlando, and Toronto. Lost out to Charlotte. And my player of the West, my best of the West, coming from this team, Domantas Sabonis, 20.5 points, 19.5 rebounds, and 9.8 assists on the week. 1 steal, 0.3 blocks. The turnovers, 6.5 a game. That's the massive... Oh, geez, I don't know about this week for Sabonis. But when you look at the control the team has when he's the number 1 option, that's when they win games. I've been saying this for, 2 seasons now? I said it in Indiana. He's a top 3 center in the league when he's on. And you're going to have a rounded week of 21, 20, and 10. I'd be very interested to know the last time anyone from Sacramento averaged that many rebounds in a week. You'd probably be going back to the Royals days of Jerry Lucas. A fair while ago. But again, Sacramento just looking better when Sabonis is running the team. He's a poor man's version of Jokic, which is saying a lot if a poor man's version of Jokic is going to give you 21, 20, and 10. Those turnovers needs to work on that one there, there's no doubt about it. But Sacramento are a better team when he runs the joint. And I like De'Aaron Fox. I don't like him enough to have him as the best shooting guard in the league, which I saw someone on Twitter say the other day, each to their own. Boggles my mind still, but that's an opinion, that's fair enough. But Sacramento are a better team when Domantas Sabonis runs the game plan. When he has the ball in his hands, when he's facilitating. De'Aaron Fox is a great shooter. De'Aaron Fox is a great scorer. He's a good guard. But he's not Domantas Sabonis. I don't know any team in the league that wouldn't want Sabonis on their team right now. Considering that De'Aaron Fox said he doesn't want to commit to Sacramento, I think it's really clear right now why the Kings should continue running through Sabonis. Don't give the keys to a driver who's not going to want to be in control of the car when the road gets a little windier. It's probably the best way to put it. Over to the Spurs. Well, still 0-3 on that week. Still only the 5 wins on the season. Lost to Boston, Memphis, and Milwaukee. Wembanyama still continuing to be a freak of a rookie. 22.7 points, 7.7 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 3.3 blocks, 52% from the field. But you've got to give him the ball. Only a minor detail, but you've still got to give him the ball. He's the best player on your team. He has the most upside of almost anybody in the league right now. And you still don't give him the ball. Possession's key. It's really simple. Just you've got to get Wemby the ball. You saw what he did playing against Giannis. Arguably the best player on the planet. Give him the ball. Get rid of some of these guys that just want a bit of me time for some veterans. Give Wemby the ball. They're a better team. They would be they'd be better by, as I said, I think there is at least 15 wins added to this team just by sacrificing some young guys who are doing nothing but pumping their own tyres for veterans that have a bit of savvy, that can craft some of the more talented young guys that they have your Vessel, your Sochan, your Collins, that can mould these kind of guys, your Wembys. Trade out your other guys for some veterans. Build up this core. Anyway, the Spurs are choosing not to do it, and they're wasting Wemby for that. Finally, Utah 3-1 on the week, 16-20. They're starting to make a bit of a run, looking more like a Chicago on that sense. They're looking a bit more like Toronto in that sense. Defeated Miami, Dallas, and Detroit. Lost to Boston. Building a bit of chemistry, getting a couple of results. Lauri Markkanen, 19.3 points, 5.3 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.5 blocks, less than a turnover a game. Can't complain about that. Be interesting to see what sort of run that Utah make. I just don't know what you do if Markkanen and Clarkson aren't doing the job. Sexton's trying to do a little bit, but it's not enough. Markkanen's certainly probably taken a bit of a step back from the progress he'd made last year. Clarkson has been talked about being traded. So Sexton is, a viable third option. But if you're Utah right now, you've got to look. You're only 4 games below 500. The Lakers have had a bit of a slump. There's not always that consistency there with Phoenix. You look on the other side of it as well. Memphis are chasing you a little bit. Houston and Golden State could be a little wary. So if you're Utah, you've got to sort of try and pick your spots. There's no reason why, if you're going to be able to produce 3 in 1 week, you can't start to rattle a few cages and sneak a couple of wins and get to 500 all of a sudden. I think that's just something Utah have to work on and focus on. It's the only real option they've got if they're really going to try and make some progress across the season. That is for sure. And of course, my best in the West, as I mentioned, Domantas Sabonis, surrounded 21, 20, and 10. Poor man Jokic. The Kings are a far better outfit when he is the number 1 man. And of course, finally in the West, the 10 best teams out there right now. The Timberwolves, the Thunder, and the Nuggets. The Clippers have somehow snuck into there, and I think they're going to stay thereabouts as well. Kawhi Leonard, the ultimate trump card right there. You've got the Kings and the Mavericks floating around. The Pelicans have started to jump into there. Of course, the Suns above 500. The Rockets above 500. So 9 of these 10 teams are actually above 500, except the Warriors, who are 1 game below and playing a lot worse than that. So just imagine if they had half a bit of chemistry as well. The top 10 in the West, really interesting right now. Clear standouts are your top 3. Clippers probably outlying there in the 4th. Kings, Mavericks, Pelicans around the same beast. Suns and Rockets similar for the meantime. And the Warriors just chasing up the tail. And that will do it for the main portion of the review section of this video. However, it is now time to move over and look at just who exactly has been the most valuable player in the NBA to the end of December for the 23-24 NBA season. And now moving from the weekly wrap through to the MVP race to the end of December 2023. And there's been some movers and shakers. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There's been a little bit of consistency throughout the list, but there's certainly been some movers and shakers throughout on this one, particularly in the lower ranks there. There were some players that were probably going to be in it right through halfway through the month, probably towards the latter part of the month. However, missing games, losing games, things of that nature generally have an impact on where players sit in this one. We'll go through the general qualifiers as always with the MVP list. Need to be on a 65-game pace. That was 70 games last year in the lockout shortened 72 season. Well, not the lockout shortened, but certainly the COVID shortened 72-game season. It was a minimum of at least 60 games played, but the league has instituted the 65-game pace, so they need to be, on target essentially to be playing at least 65 games. They need to be leading their team to wins. It's really simple. The best player in a winning side and generally contributing to being the best player in that win. So just because your team has a winning record doesn't mean you're the best player on that team, but it certainly does help if you are the reason that those particular victories are on the way. No trade talk, ideally, or haven't been traded is probably another way to put it. Which is why someone like a James Harden certainly fell out of contention really quickly over the last couple of seasons. And of course, playoff hopes. Ideally, the team is seeded. Ideally, the team is in that top 8 discussion, and certainly when it comes to the crunching of where players sit, seeding certainly does help on that one there. Of course, to go through with the MVP race, you need to look at all aspects of that there. And of course, the big one for me is looking at the honourable mentions, looking at the guys that aren't in the list, guys that aren't at the point in time of this. Now, this is to December 31st. This isn't including the first week of January. This is to December 31st. So you do need to keep that in mind when looking at this and when considering it. My 3 honourable mentions for the MVP list at that particular juncture: Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors, with the Warriors being 11th in the West. Anthony Davis of the Los Angeles Lakers, with them being 9th in the West. And Trae Young of the Atlanta Hawks being 11th in the East. Of course, for Steph Curry, through to the end of December, averaging 27.3 points, 4.4 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.4 blocks on 3.1 turnovers. Still shooting 45% from the field, still shooting over 40% from deep, and still shooting over 90% from the free throw line. 45.3 from the field, 40.9 from deep, 93.1 from the free throw line. Played in 30 games, 33.5 minutes a game. In the 30 games he's played, there have been 15 and 15, and he's the best player in 14 of those 15 wins. For Anthony Davis, 25 points, 12.3 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 1.2 steals, and 2.6 blocks on 2 turnovers a game. 55.1 from the field, 37.5 from deep, 80.6% from the free throw line. As far as the two-way big, one of the best in the league, been one of the best in the league for a decade. Played in 32 games, averaged 35.6 minutes a game. In those 32 games, the Lakers have gone 17 and 15 to that particular point, and I thought he was the best player in 10 of those 17 wins. For Trae Young of the Atlanta Hawks, 28.3 points, 3 rebounds, 11.3 assists, 1.4 steals, and 0.2 blocks a game. 4.3 turnovers, not ideal. Certainly think that his outside shooting and his free throw shooting has improved. 43.6 from the field, 38.5 from deep, 86% from the free throw line. In the 30 games he has played, he's averaged 36.6 minutes. The Hawks have been 12 and 18, and he's been the best player in 10 of those 12 wins. So that should give you a real idea of how this one is being gauged. For me, Steph Curry, as far as his wins are considered, and the impact he's had on winning, you make a case he's been a top 5 player in the league this year. It was very hard for me to have a guy in the MVP race when, at the time, the team wasn't even in the playing tournament, let alone in the top 8. The Lakers very much on the verge there, which is very similar for Anthony Davis here, a guy that was very, very close to being in that top 10. And obviously for Trae Young, the team so far out of contention as far as what a team looks like in the playoffs. No doubt contributing to wins, that's going to keep him in all-star contention. But as far as an MVP conversation, not something that is going to be available there. Moving up to number 10, he's had a bit of a fall since November, but moving to number 10, I've got Jason Tatum of the Boston Celtics. Boston sitting number 1 in the East. And Tatum's production throughout the season has seen 26.9 points, 8.4 rebounds, 4.4 assists, 1 steal and 0.5 blocks, less than 3 turnovers. His efficiency levels haven't been too bad, 47.4 from the field, 34.6 from deep, 80.6% from the free throw line now. Efficiency has dipped this season, but you've got to remember he's got a lot more freedom to play a little more loosely, a little more aggressively in his game, particularly when you consider that he's not the only Celtic on my list. That should give you some sort of indication. When you've got other good scorers, when you've got other good defenders, and you've got reasonably capable bigs on the team, you're allowed to play with a little more aggression. That's exactly what Tatum's been able to do. In the 30 games that he's played through to the end of December, he's averaged 36.8 minutes, a win-loss record of 24-6, and I feel that he's been the best player in 9 of those 24 games there. So Jason Tatum still having a top 10 season for me, still producing, still getting it done. But again, should just give you an indicator of where I think totally overall he probably sits in the grand scheme of individual performances this season when he's in there with 9 wins. But he's had a really good year. He's been one of the two best Celtics this season. Boston at number 1. He's been a really key factor and a really key contributor to their success. And he's had a really good season once again. Number 9, I've got Kevin Durant of the Phoenix Suns, 8th in the West. And he barely makes it, particularly with the criteria of not being on the trade block or having trade talks surrounding him. Because whether it's him or the rest of his team, it's something that does need to be considered. But Durant this season, 29.9 to the end of December, 29.9 points, 6.3 rebounds, 6 assists, 0.9 steals, 1.1 blocks a game, 3.4 turnovers. Epically efficient, 36 and 6, 1 steal, 1 block. You look at the shooting splits, 52.5% from the field, 47.7% from deep, and 87.4% from the free throw line. In Durant's 28 games played, he's averaged 37.1 minutes, 14 and 14 win-loss record, but I think he's been the best player in at least 10 of those 14 wins. Kevin Durant's just, his offensive looks right now, they're far more efficient. And a lot of that is key for the fact that he is not always he's not always the number 1 defensive assignment. There are other players that they need to worry about on the team. Durant plays better in that system. There's no doubt about it. It's certainly a gripe against Kevin Durant on an all-time scale that he does play a lot better with offensive relief when he's not the number 1 option and isn't the number 1 focus. That's probably the biggest gripe of his career, beyond the fact that he's picking and choosing teams at this point. But at the same time, when he's taking advantage of those looks, this is what you get. You get around at 36 and 6, 50, 40, 90. As I said, I think Kevin Durant has been a top 10 player this year. The Suns are getting back onto some winning basketball here. So no doubt you're going to see his production lift. You're going to see him responsible for more wins. He may go up the charts. Kevin Durant having a really nice season there, as I mentioned. 29.9 points, 6.3 rebounds, 6 assists, 52 or 53, 48, 87 splits. Best player in 10 wins, Kevin Durant for the Phoenix Suns, number 9 on my MVP list. And coming in at number 8, a guy who had a massive December. Very unlucky not to get player of the month consideration. And I think it all comes down to the fact that Boston are just flying so well and people are very much infatuated with the way Jason Tatum plays. But at number 8, I have Jaylen Brown. 23 points, 5.1 rebounds, 3.7 assists. Now, it's not jumping off the page. That's pretty evident. But again, you've got to be the best. You've got to be leading your team to wins, being the best player in winning situations. And that's exactly what Jaylen Brown did in December. He's the reason Boston really retained that record as the number 1. 48.9 from the field, 35.8 from deep, 73.3 from the free throw line. 24 and 6 in the 30 games played, averaged 33.8 minutes in those games, and for me, responsible for 11 out of 24 wins to the end of December. Jaylen Brown's had a really, really fluctuating career. Went from, is he the guy that's going to be Boston's best player, to no, he's definitely going to be the second option for Boston, to, geez, they can't win without Jaylen Brown, to this season, got paid and now playing like a player who got paid. Playing like a $300 million man. And I understand that Tatum has been having a really good season. Tatum had a rip-fire start to the season. But Jason Tatum did not have a better month of December than Jaylen Brown. And when you factor in that Jaylen Brown was still contributing there in November, it's kind of hard for me to sort of sit there and disregard Jaylen Brown's contributions. And I thought Jason Tatum had a case as the MVP last year. Jason Tatum had a case. If you were going to look at how I had my criteria last year, I have nothing against Jason Tatum if he'd have won the MVP last year. Nothing. He did start to falter in the postseason, which people, despite the fact it's a regular season award, still weigh on it. I understand that. It's not really fair. People weigh down on it. But it was pretty hard for me to not consider Jaylen Brown at this point. He's played some really good basketball. He's played some league-leading basketball. When you've been arguably the best player for a month on the best team in the league, that's got a lot of credence. Again, able to play with a bit more freedom, much like Tatum, because of what they've got around them. But you've still got to be able to produce. That's exactly what Jaylen Brown has done. Number 8 my MVP list to the end of December. Coming in at number 7, and this one becomes a matter of seeding. It becomes a matter of opinion. It's something that I had to really think of. But I got Tyrese Halliburton of the Indiana Pacers, with Indiana sitting 7th in the East. And Halliburton, as I said, having probably the best pure point guard season we've seen since John Stockton and Magic Johnson. 24.6 points, 4 rebounds, 12.8 assists, the league leader in assists, 1 steal, 0.6 blocks, but it's the efficiency in which he's doing it. Around at 25, 4 and 13, less than 3 turnovers, shooting 50.1% from the field, 41.4% from deep, and over 80% from the free throw line, over 85% from the free throw line. In 28 games played, he's averaged 34.2 minutes. The Pacers in those 28 games have gone 16 and 12, and he was the best player in 12 of those 16 wins. And just to give you an idea as we go through the list here, that would put Tyrese Halliburton comfortably on the All-NBA second team. For me, he would comfortably be on the second team. And it depends how you want to vote your teams. They're positionless this year, so I can make a case that my second team is Tatum, Durant, Brown, Halliburton, at least at this stage. Not a bad team. Now, if you're going to look at the fact that is he the best point guard in the league this year? Maybe he's All-NBA first team. I would not want to be the person that has to try and pick the first, second, and third team this year. Because Tyrese Halliburton becomes one of those guys of what if. Because in the traditional sense, yeah, absolutely, he makes the All-NBA first team. But for me, in the sense of you pick the 5 best players in the league to be on your All-NBA first team, I don't know. I don't think so. But again, we're talking about a guy who's averaging around a 25, 4 and 13, 50, 40, 85 splits, less than 3 turnovers a game, and it's producing a point guard season that we haven't seen since Magic Johnson. Just something to think about. Halliburton's a freak. He's playing really, really well, and he's leading one of the best offenses ever in league history with unprecedented efficiency when you factor everything in. Number 7 on my MVP list, Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers. Moving at number 6, and it was literally a seeding difference on this one. I had to do it. I couldn't not do it. The leader of the best team in the Western Conference, number 6, Anthony Davis, the Minnesota Timberwolves. As I said, Minnesota number 1 in the West. Edwards averaging 26 points, 5.4 rebounds, 5.2 assists, 1.4 steals, 0.3 blocks. Turnover rate has gone up. Shooting efficiency has gone down. But he also, much like Jaylen Brown, much like Jason Tatum, has a lot more freedom right now. And that's because of the depth of the team and what is being brought in other sectors of the team. He just has the freedom to go about it and attack and be aggressive. 28 games played, he's averaged 34.6 minutes. Minnesota went 22-6 through those 28 games, and he was the best player for me in 12 of those wins. Of course, when you want to factor in Tatum and Brown and Edwards and you want to use the seeding argument, great, I understand it. But you're talking about guys who are playing with All-NBA as All-NBA guys, or playing with an All-NBA teammate, playing with an All-Defensive teammate, and playing with another All-Star. And it's great production for Anthony Edwards, no doubt about it. I think he's been one of the 2 best shooting guards in the league, one of the 3 best shooting guards in the league. Has really taken that jump, continues to show why he should have been Rookie of the Year over LaMelo, shows why he deserved to be credited with his work in the off-season, particularly playing with Team USA. But the fact of the matter is that he's playing on a very good team, and there are other people contributing in that team. And again, I think the seeding is what just has to put him over Halliburton. I think there has to be a level of respect to that. It's depending on what role you need them to play for your team, who's having the better season, it's up to you. But again, if I was going to be picking the All-NBA team, and I'm going to be picking it based on the positionless allowance that they have now. And my All-NBA second team right now as it sits is Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant, Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Halliburton, and Anthony Edwards. You then have to ask the question, where does Steph Curry, Anthony Davis, and Trae Young sit if that's how it's going to work? I think you'll find that when I start getting into my top 5 here, it's going to be very hard for you to try and squeeze anyone beyond these guys into it. It's just a fact of life. But Anthony Edwards having a really good season again. Playing next to another all-star level player, Karl-Anthony Towns. Rudy Gobert certainly pushing that all-star conversation. Rudy Gobert certainly pushing that all-defensive conversation, let alone defensive player of the year. Naz Reid playing as a genuine six-man. Good rotations through the team. You know, again, allows to play with a lot more freedom and allowed to really go about it, particularly here in his third, fourth season after a breakout off season with Team USA. But Edwards having a really sensational year. Just not enough to crack that top 5. And as we move to number 5, you'll see why. Luka Doncic for me are the Dallas Mavericks. They currently sit 6th in the West. Luka having another monster season, around at 34, 8, and 9. Yes, he's having numbers that LeBron had in his peak against Orlando as a Cavalier. 33.9 points, 8.4 rebounds, 9.3 assists, or 1.4 steals and 0.6 blocks. Turnovers are high, but so is the usage. Just a tick under 49% from the field. His three-point shooting's improved at 38.4%. 78.7 from the free throw line. You would like to see an improvement on that. But they have been producing. And all of a sudden, the chemistry on this team looks like it's going to jump up a little bit, and he's going to continue to lead them. In 30 games played, he's averaged 37.1 minutes, record of 19 and 11 through those 30 games, and he's been the best player in 15 of those 19 wins. Luka is an offensive machine, there's no doubt about it. I saw something, I think it was the other day, that based on the pace and the success rate statistically that Luka's having, he would be on pace to pass LeBron's all-time scoring leadership, if he was to have the durability, of course, and have more rebounds and assists. Now, it doesn't mean anything if you're going to be a perennial first, second round player. It's like, good on you, awesome. And that's something I think he needs to work on this year, particularly in Dallas. Because Cuban won't get rid of him. Dallas will love him till the cows come home. But if you're going to be Luka Doncic and you're going to be producing these sort of numbers and you're going to be, have people in the media claiming for you to be an MVP, you need to be winning games. You need to do something that's far more statistically substantial than anyone else. He's not the best scorer in the league. He's not the best triple-double threat in the league. He's not the most efficient triple-double in the league. He's not the most efficient scorer. He's not a good defender. He produces, don't get me wrong, he produces in spades. But these are the subtle nuances that are going to come down to the argument of where he sits in the MVP conversation. They're not talking about trading him, so he's fine there. They're in playoff contention, so he's fine there. He's leading them to wins, that's fine. He's playing at a winning pace. That's, that 65 win or 65 game pace, that's fine. But now you've got to start really producing them to wins. Dallas start getting towards that third seed and really start making a run as far as wins produced, then you got a different conversation. But right now I have Luka at 5th. I'm quite comfortable with that. Luka has had a top 5 season. Luka has had an All-NBA first team season. That's pretty much all you can ask for from any player. Where the seeding goes from there is totally up to a pundit. But Luka for me, 5th in the MVP conversation. Coming in at number 4, Giannis Antetokounmpo for the Milwaukee Bucks, who sits 2nd in the East. 30.1 points on the season to go with 11.1 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1.2 blocks. We're talking the All-NBA first team power forward. We're talking all defensive level power forward. Giannis is back to making his case as the best player on the planet. It's the postseason that's going to be the determining factor on that ultimately. Because the system is now back again to Milwaukee just running around Giannis. And why wouldn't it be? Again, another player who can play with a sense of more freedom with Damian Lillard on the team. With Chris Middleton back in the lineup. With Brook Lopez delivering. Now, a lot of these guys in these high-seeded teams have a lot in common. Luka's going to play with more freedom when Kyrie's happy. Anthony Edwards playing with a far more cohesive team this season. He's going to play with more freedom. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, the same. Kevin Durant, when Phoenix are running, the same. Gonna see these continued patterns. Giannis is no exception. It's just that Giannis is the number one guy and the number one focus. 54% from the field, 28.5 from deep, 7.6 from the free throw line. So he's working on the free throws. He's consistent from the field. Needs to still work on that jumper if he's going to take it. Because if you're going to take him, you've got to make him. But in 31 games, Giannis has averaged 34.8 minutes, 23-8 record for the Bucks in that point. And I think of those 23 wins, he's been the best player in 15 of them. So he's still getting it done. He's still making a case. He's still showing that he's about and that he can get things done. That's not necessarily all the way to the level that it was, but it's still there. And if he's back to all-world defense and he's going to continue to produce like around a 30, 10, and 5 with all-world defense, with the better offensive options he's got right now, Bucks are going to be a real challenge for Boston. That'll be a playoff series I'm keen to see. But Giannis just having another good year, another top 5 season, still remains one of the 2 best players on the planet. I can't fault him there. But the guy who has been judged the best player on the planet, and understandably why, currently sitting 3rd in my MVP race with the Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic. They are 3rd in the West. Just continuing to produce. It's not much else that can really be said. He just continues to produce, continues to pour in results. It's not even it's just funny at this point to see a guy who goes out, looks to be in a half motion, and just plays the game and plays it so damn well. It's Larry Bird if he was 7 foot, ladies and gentlemen. Larry was a better shooter. Larry was just as capable a passer. Comparatively on the boards, yeah. Better defensively, Bird. Probably slightly more efficient in scoring splits. But this is what Bird would do in today's league. It's just people don't get that though. Jokic, massive season so far. Denver still 3rd in the West, despite some of the chemistry that they've had jumping in and out of the lineup. As I mentioned, 26.1 points, 12.3 rebounds, 9.2 assists, 26, 12, and 9. 1.2 steals, 0.8 blocks, less than 3 turnovers, 55.5 from the field, making a third of his threes, 8 out of 10 from the free throw line, 81.7%. Producing wins. Getting it done when the team's short-handed, when they've got the upper hand, when they're fighting from behind, when they're playing in front. He's the Joker. He's arguably the best player in the league. 33 games played. He's averaged 33.6 minutes in those 33. Denver have gone 22-11 as a win-loss over those 33 games. And he's been the best player in 18 wins. So in 22 of their wins, he's been the best player in 18 of them. Quite a high ratio. And if it came to splitting hairs, that would be a very big determining factor. But Jokic, number 3 on the MVP list with the number 3 seed Nuggets. At number 2, the guy who won the MVP last year essentially whinged and moaned that he wanted the MVP last year. And then he's come out and had a far better year this year and made more of a case than at any point in his career. And that's Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers. Embiid so far this season, 35 points per game, 11.7 rebounds per game, 6 assists, 1.2 steals, and 2 blocks a game. Can very well make the case he has been the best player on the planet this year. Looks like he's going to win a 3rd straight scoring title. Could win a 2nd MVP. Could very well win a 2nd MVP. It will come down to just how well he goes in the postseason for that perception. Because if they have another bad postseason run, like conference finals or nothing at this point. Otherwise, Embiid will be put in that hardened bracket of a great regular season performer. But when the lights got turned up, just couldn't do it. That's really what it's weighing down to Embiid at the moment, and whether he's going to stay healthy and is he going to get a 65-game pace in. Because if a player misses 17 games now, it's done. 18 games, sorry, it's done. That's it. Embiid scoring at a rate of 54% from the field, 35% from deep, close to 90% at the free throw line. We're talking about a big guy here averaging 35 a game, clearly more than 50% from the field, and almost 9 of 10 from the stripe. That's unheard of. From an efficient scoring standpoint as a centre, it's one of the most efficient scoring centre seasons ever. And he's having a better passing year and a better defensive year. This is why I never understood why players campaign for the MVP. You've just got to play above and beyond. You've just got to get any reasonable doubt out of anybody watching you to go, maybe he is the best player. Embiid's taken that step. You know, a genuine case against Jokic this year for who the best centre in the league is. Nothing wrong with that conversation at all this year. Not a problem, because he stepped up and done the job. He's played 25 games, averaged 34.2 minutes through those games to the end of December. 20-5 win-loss record over those 25 games, and in those 20 wins, I had him best player in 19 of. Only one game where I didn't think in those 25 played, and the 20 wins of those 25, that he wasn't the best player on the floor in that win. That's dominant. That's a better ratio than Jokic. Averaging more points, as competitive on the rebounds. Number 2 in my MVP race, Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers. And much like he was in November, he is in December. My MVP leader, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I don't know why this isn't being talked about more, and it's just sad that it's not being talked about more. Again, there's been that switch from such a perimeter-based game, getting back into the bigs that are producing, and producing at a unique level. You have a point guard that's having a Magic Johnson level season. You have other guards that are running around having huge seasons, other bigs that are having big seasons. And the one guy they're not talking about is the guy who to me has been clear-cut the best player in the league this season, and it's not close. Shai's got the Thunder the second best team in the West. He's averaging 31.2 points, 5.7 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 2.6 steals, and 0.8 blocks to the end of December on 2 turnovers. He's averaging 54.6 from the field, 31.7 from deep. Okay, you'd like that to be better, but 91.6 from the free throw line. In 30 games played, he's averaged 34.7 minutes. The Thunder have held a record of 22-8 in that time period, and he's been the best player in 21 of 22 wins. Ladies and gentlemen, he's the first person responsible for the best player in 20 wins this season. The first player. And I have no doubt that he's on a pace. He's on a very unique pace. Shai's on a 50-win responsible pace. Now, I'd have to go back and track it and look at who all these particular players are with that there. But I know Mike in 96 is there, and they won 72 games. Steph's probably there as well. Like, we're talking about a shooting guard here that's producing on a basic numbers level like that as Mike. A guy who scores effortlessly. A guy who plays both sides of the ball efficiently. Who leads this team to wins. He's 25 years old. He leads the team to wins. To give you an idea, when OKC were winning 15, 16, 17 games a few years ago, if they won 17 games, then Shai was the best player in 15 of them. Now all of a sudden you see them winning big games, and Shai's still the best player in them. He's clearly eclipsing everyone else. He clearly stands out amongst his own young team. He clearly stands out amongst guards. And the only thing that I can point out is that it's a small market team, because beyond that, there's no excuse for anybody to be not even considering Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this year. I don't even think it's been close who the MVP of the league has been this year. Embiid's had a nice run. Jokic had some run. Giannis has built a couple of things up. Luka's producing. But Shai has consistently been there. Embiid's had a couple of periods where he's been out. Jokic, a couple of periods where he's been down and about. The Bucks have started from a little way back. But Shai has been there all year. And that has been a huge, huge point as to why I think he has been the MVP of the league this year. So number one on my list to the end of December, for me, the MVP of the NBA for the 23-24 season so far has been Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder. And with that, guys, that wraps up the huge bumper episode, my wrap of Week 10 and my league MVP. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys. That's been me. I'm out.